Welcome back to the Battle Buddies podcast, where we believe that you should not take on the world alone. Now, Gabe.
Hello.
I am really excited about this episode. Do you know why?
Why are you excited?
Because the audio is
so clean.
Much better.
They really sound good. I hope the audio difference is noticeable. Maybe.
It'll be way better than those old Xbox headsets that we used for episodes.
Hey, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah,
you
got to start somewhere. That we'll actually talk about that later in the episode about you got to start somewhere. But anyway, make sure you stick around to the end of today's episode because we do have a very exciting announcement to make about next episode. I'm not going to say what it is because I'm going to save it for the end. But anyway, today's episode is titled "Why We Do What We Do," and Gabe, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, of course. What I kind of want to talk about today is our purpose for the podcast and our purpose for what we do, which is martial arts. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I know it's a little bit late. Usually you should probably, start with this, but we're white belts at podcasting, so
Indeed.
We're kind of figuring this out. I appreciate you guys for sticking with us. But why we do what we do is our purpose. And what I want to encapsulate today is when you listen to the podcast, when it comes out, why are we talking about the things that we are talking about, and what is the lens that we're looking at things through? I'll start off with kind of talking about me, I suppose, and Adam and I both come from the same background, so it's essentially the same story, but as you've heard before, we're both martial arts instructors. We've been doing martial arts for however many years, and one of my passions has always been to facilitate the growth of the next generation, and I've always been fascinated with that journey that I took back in the day. I started when I was just a wee little lad, right? You've heard me talk about this again, so I don't want to spend too much time. But when I was young, I couldn't do much. I was unfocused, unself-controlled, whatever. And over time, I grew my passion and my purpose to where I am today, where I'm standing. Oh, I guess I'm sitting right now, technically, but where I'm sitting today. And that journey is such an interesting one. So a little more backstory on what I do before I talk about that. I lead a junior leadership program for our gym, and we call it Battle Buddies, which is kind of where the name came from. And I've been doing that for about 4 years, I suppose, about 4 years. And Battle Buddies was created as a little bit of backstory, because I don't think everyone knows this. This is not common knowledge. Battle Buddies was created when a student we had way back in the day. We had a student who did not pass their test, and it was on some things that we went, man, we really could have prepared them for that. So I was the assistant at the time of Eric, who is another instructor with us. He's not with us anymore. He's joined the Army. He's in the Army now. He's not with us. Doesn't sound about right. He's joined the Army, so he's not here to talk about it. But
I hope to one day have him on here.
Yes, eventually. We'll have him on to talk about the other half that I don't exactly know, or didn't share as well, whatever. But when we started Battle Buddies, it was because we noticed that there was a lack of preparation for being a leader at our facility, Max Academy of Martial Arts. We realized that there was a lack of preparation to be a teacher, to be a helper, to be a mentor. And we wanted to make sure that they were ready physically, that they were ready mentally, that they were ready with their technique. And so we created this system, this class, that prepares them in every way we know how to be a leader. Not just an instructor, but a leader. And we try to prepare them for that, and we talk about concepts. We go over lots of notes and details from the things we've learned. and try to pass it on to them. And this is a long tangent, so apologies. But one of my big passions has always been, as I said earlier, the transition from student to teacher, from teacher to teacher of teachers, which is where I am right now, which is a really cool place to be, which is I get to teach people how to teach. And I feel like I'm moving on to a new realm. I've heard Master Chip talk about this, Grand Master Chip. And he talked about after that, he's moved into the stage of wanting to create a legacy. And what I know is eventually I won't be here, whether I move on or I die or I whatever. And so I want there to be the evidence of what I said so that other people can then pass it on. In case they're ever needing it, they're ever wondering about it, they can take whatever wisdom or knowledge I might have, which is not a ton, but whatever I can give, and they can then take it and pass it on to their next generation.
Yeah, I've noticed this. I mentioned this in the first episode, which is it's almost like this grand martial arts narrative storyline, whatever you want to call it, where one generation raises up and then it trains to teach the next one, and it trains to teach the next one, and the goal of each generation is to learn as much as they can and pass on as much as they can so that the knowledge and the wisdom they learned is not lost with time. And that is one of the core reasons that Gabe and I started this podcast, was for this to be a conduit to keep wisdom alive. To keep...
It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, to keep anything that we've learned, to keep it in our local martial arts community, and to spread it to anyone who's listening so that they can keep that wisdom alive as well.
Yes, our start was, at least for me, my goal was to start with, hey, I want my team, the junior instructors that I'm training, to be as prepared as possible. And if I can give them a little bit more wisdom in the form of something like a podcast, if they want to listen to it. I know a couple of them are listening. Hi, good to see you. I'm hoping that they can perhaps glean a little bit more, because, well, I know for certain that I'm forgetful and I forget things that I'm told. And so if you have it in a form where you can replay it or rewind it or listen to it again and try to keep that in your memory that way, I think that's great. And further than that, if there's someone out there who says this is helpful, great. That's one of the best parts about martial arts, is being able to help people to the point where you see them succeed. One of the coolest things in a martial artist's teaching journey is when you see your student click and you see them understand what you're saying and get what you're saying and then do what you're saying. There's little that's better than that, because that's that improvement. And you can tell that, I was talking about this today with the Battle Buddies in my lecture. I said, you're helping them. It's not your doing. They succeeded, but it was through your guidance. And that means that their achievements are then your celebration. When they succeed, you succeed in a little bit too, because you knew you did something right.
Yeah. One of the best feelings as a teacher is to know that my student is now better off, or they're better at something, or their character's a little bit stronger because of some way, somehow I impacted them. Something I did was able to impact them. And don't let your motivation be, oh, I want to show off how great of a teacher
I want to be the best.
Yeah,
I want to just steamroll over everybody.
Yeah, I'm so great at everything. That's not what we're saying. Because when you're a teacher, really what you are, and I'm sure any teacher at all can attest to this, is when you're a teacher, what you really are is a servant. Like, you are there to serve your students and serve them with knowledge. I picture in my head right now, like, I'm serving you a plate of knowledge. Here's the knowledge.
Have the fresh knowledge.
Yes. But really, that's what you are as a teacher. You're there to serve your students and to work hard for your students. And be able to be patient with them and really kind of get in the deep in the gutters with them and get in the hard work and kind of get messy a little bit in the learning, because sometimes you'll have students that it comes really easy to them, the concepts and the techniques, and some of them it won't. It'll be hard for them to learn, and they'll have difficult learning curves. I think of a student that just in our last unit, we were doing an anti-bullying technique with some of our younger students, our 4 to 6 year olds, and we had a 6-year-old student who had a very strong aversion to the anti-bullying drills that we would do. And all we were asking them to do was to put their hands up and open, so it shows the person that's being a bully to you that you don't want to fight, and say something assertive to them, like say back away or say back off, and then just walk around them. And we were teaching them, this is how you respond to someone who's being a bully, someone who's just saying rude things to you. And this student had such a strong aversion to this. He just didn't like the conflict that the situation that was in the situation. And I remember every time we went to drill it in class, he wouldn't want to do it. He'd go run to his parents. And then at the end of the unit, I had to test him on it for his test, and I got him to do it, and he was able to do it. And I just did that within 5 minutes by just saying to him, okay, you're going to do just this step right now. You're just going to do just this part right now. And he just did it little by little by little, and eventually he was able to do it, and it felt great afterwards, because I was like, yes. Now, was he able to look like the best student who ever did it out of all my other students? No, of course there's always things that could have been improved, but it's that baby step factor. And that's something that I always have to remind myself of as an instructor, is sometimes your students aren't, in fact, most of the time, your students aren't going to take big leaps, they're going to take baby steps. And I have to be satisfied with those baby steps, especially the students who aren't as athletic or not as coordinated. And no matter how many times you say to them or show them the technique, they still can't get it down. And this is actually something you taught me, Gabe, is find something that they can be a pro at really easily. And then when they do, it's like, yes, like celebrate that so much with them. And this actually goes into another thing I learned in a child development class, actually, which is reward direction, not perfection. And we were watching a lecture in my child development class. I don't remember what the guy's name was who was giving the lecture, but he's a very experienced educator and very experienced with children, especially children with learning disabilities. And he said, reward direction, not perfection. Of course, it'd be great if all your students were perfect, except that's not how humans work.
I wish.
So reward students who are going in the right direction. If they're doing a front kick and they have a terrible front kick, and you say, okay, pick up your chamber for your front kick. Make sure you pick up your knee, then throw the front kick. If they pick up their knee and do the chamber and then do the front kick and everything else is terrible, I'm going to say, you know what? That chamber was awesome. Great job getting that chamber. I'm going to reward the direction because they're moving in the right way.
Another way I like to think of us as instructors, and forgive me those who are this way, because there's a lot of them, and most of the ones who bring their kids here. As a parent, in some sense, we keep a kid for 45 minutes or an hour or two, whatever. But in some ways, as a good teacher, you need to be a good parent as well. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say parenting skills I've learned, but kind of.
Yeah.
I've learned how to be a good parent in some ways, or even be a good father. And I know that in some cases, and this is something that can get me sometimes if I'm not careful, is sometimes I am the father figure, which is strange. But sometimes if you're the coach or the trainer or the teacher or the mentor, you could be the only parental figure that really wants them to succeed, and sometimes that's the case. Now, of course, we have amazing parents here at Max Academy, and I know a lot of them really well, and some of them I've had the privilege of working with as well as their students, and it's always an interesting thing to watch the parents and how they interact with their kids, because sometimes it'll teach me how to better interact with their kids as well. So I see this kid, okay, they respond a little bit more to this, they respond a little bit more to that, and so that can kind of orient how I interact with the student. And of course, that's another piece of is time. I think it's fair to say, although I've never had a kid myself, I think it's fair to say that when parents start out, they start out, well, to be blunt, they start out as white belts too, right? They start out as white belts because whenever you start something, you're not going to be the greatest at it, as we've said many, many times. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but when the parents start, oftentimes they don't necessarily know what to do, or they don't know what's right, what discipline looks like, what control looks like for their kid, what boundaries should be set, and a lot of their time is spent figuring that out. And it's the same way with coaches or teachers or instructors, is we need to figure out what to set as our limits, and what is right for them, what is not right, how do we train them in the best way possible, what do boundaries look like. Everything like that is something that we need to deal with as well. Not that we have to deal with it more than parents. Some parents go, it's always funny, they'll say to me, man, I can't believe you're so patient with that kid. And I say, look, I have them for 45 minutes. You have them all day. I'm sure if I had them all day, I would feel the same way as you. But sometimes we can end up as helping facilitate that kid's improvement. And that's something that should be celebrated, right? The parents brought the kids here 90% of the time. And this is a good thing for people to know. When people come to martial arts, the main reason usually is not, I want my kid to defend myself. Strangely enough, that's usually not the main reason. The main reason they want their kid to be in martial arts is they're not focused, or they're not disciplined, or they're not controlled. And it's funny how often those things come up, because you'd think, oh yeah, you come to martial arts to learn how to hit stuff. No, somehow, and I don't know where this originated, I'd have to look into that, somehow martial arts has gained a reputation of control and focus. And I think, just spitting off the top of my head, that's probably because, well, to do martial arts effectively, you need to have a good amount of control and a good amount of respect and a good amount of focus. But it's important to remember that when the students come in, because that's one of the main ways we service them.
I wrote down on my notes here, we are in the business of serving. That's what martial arts is. And to kind of go back to how self-control or character or discipline is intertwined with martial arts, it's kind of a cultural thing. Like I'd say fair. It's deep in the martial arts culture, because we've gone to conventions before and for martial arts, and that's a part of the culture, that you're disciplined, you're self-controlled, you respect the higher ranks, and that's what it's about. And when we get these students who need those types of improvements, it can be really difficult as an instructor when you get those types of students who are the difficult students. And what you almost have to remember is the students that are the hardest to give patience to are the ones that need it the most.
Yes.
Yeah. If you have a student who's always the star student, super athletic, always does the technique super well, great leader in class, if they mess up once, easy to give grace to that student, because you think in your mind, oh, this student has been great consistently before, this is just one little fluke, I can easily forgive this student. But those other students that can be rowdy in class, that can be distracting as an instructor. I've recently been getting more experience dealing with these types of students, and I'm still learning how to deal with these types of students, but you have to remember that every time, and this is not my own piece of knowledge, this is something I've learned as I've been learning how to be an instructor over the past few years. Every time you teach a class, that student is either one class closer to quitting or one class closer to getting their black belt. And so your job as the instructor is to make sure that that class is one class closer to getting their black belt.
Yes.
And that's the why I love future pacing so much. And I believe I talked about this in episode 1, which is future pacing yourself, future pacing your students, thinking about the goal in mind and where you want to be, and what you want your students to be also. But also remembering it's about baby steps. It's about 1% every day. It's about that slow grind that can be frustrating sometimes. And ever so often, you do have those days that are just great. Yeah, that you're like, oh, today's 5%. That was awesome. And I want to talk about one of those days. So, I was actually teaching a panda class with Gabe once. And this was a couple years ago. And we had a new student who had signed up to try class, and he was afraid to step on the mat. He was really scared to join class, and we've had plenty of students like that before. And so Gabe was taking care of the class. There weren't too many panda students, and he's an experienced instructor. He can handle it. He can handle it on his own. I stepped off the mat, and I just started a conversation with the student, and he's like a 5-year-old kid. And so what my mind immediately goes to is I want to build rapport with this student. Building rapport with your students, whether they're a new student or if you've known them for years, building rapport is so important. So my mind goes, I want to build rapport with the student. I'm going to find out what this student likes. So we end up sitting on this bench, and for 20 minutes it must have been, we talked about Pokemon. This kid loved Pokemon, and he just told me about a Pokemon movie he watched. He told me about Pokemon cards, Pokemon toys. He told me about everything he loves about Pokemon. And then after we had finished, I went back onto the mat because I had to go help Gabe finish up the class. And I was like, oh, maybe he'll come out for class because maybe he feels a little bit more confident now that he knows me and I've built some rapport with him. And I see him and his mom leave the dojo, and I go, oh, man. And then a couple minutes later, we're still working on the class. We're still doing drills and stuff. It must have been like 2 minutes later. I see him come back in, and they're at the edge of the mat. I'm like, yes. And so I bring him back into class, and he does the class, and he finishes the class, and he had a great time. And that's one of those celebrations that I myself had as an instructor, and it's one of those great moments that I can always go back to and think about, this is what it's about.
Yeah.
Like, this is why we do what we do, which is literally the title of the episode. Moments like this, I love this. This will never get old, is watching students overcome their obstacles. Not the obstacles that you set for them, the obstacles that you think they should be able to overcome. I mean, although we do have curriculum that we want them to learn.
Yes.
Not saying that they shouldn't be able to do that, but their own individual obstacles that they have as a human being. Like that 5-year-old kid, he had a hard time coming out into the mat, being confident, being brave, and it was because of building rapport with him that got him out there. Man, like those moments when you see a student overcome something like that, it's brilliant. And I was talking to, I remember talking to one of my senseis a few years back when we were at a martial arts convention in Denver, actually. And the day was over. We were going back to the hotel so that we could get some rest and get ready for the next day. And we were talking about just how long he had been teaching for. And he said something that I'll never forget, which is, changing lives, it goes by so fast. And it was just a great statement.
That is one of the best parts about the job, for sure, is seeing the success. I could tell stories all day. I'll keep it relatively short because I don't want to, go forever.
Yeah. We have so many stories.
We have so many stories, and hey, if we want to do it, that would be cool. Maybe one day we'll just do stories.
We'll do an episode called Stories.
Stories. There's a lot of them, man, and a lot of success stories. Those are the ones that really get me. And I've had some kids who have really succeeded. And whenever they succeed, like I said earlier, their achievement is your celebration. When you see them achieve something that they didn't think they could, that reminds me why I'm here. Like you said, why I'm here. There's a reason I'm doing this and not at some Pilates class somewhere. There's a reason I'm doing this, because this is how I help people take on the world, like we said. And that's going to be a phrase, by the way, just a quick side note, that's going to be a phrase that I want reoccurring, because that is our main purpose statement, is you shouldn't take on the world alone. And so if we can help you do that a little more, great. Back to what you said about rapport. Rapport is important because the kid has to trust you and they have to like you a little bit too. I say this too. It was kind of strange for them. I could tell they weren't really on board with it at first when I told them. But I've told some of my junior instructors, I've said, you have to get the student to like you. They say, what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, if they don't like you, why are they going to listen to you? Mm-hmm. How many people, besides when you have to, how many people have you gotten counsel from and listened deeply that you despised? Very few, right? Maybe a couple, maybe, if you're just a very noble human being, yeah, which isn't a lot of us. But learning to build that rapport first is important. Kind of what you said about talking with them, building a relationship. I think this is something that's missed a lot, and especially in older education. I think it's a little better now in older business models that were more centered upon, there's different business models. One of them being, you are there to work and I am here to boss you around. And what you do is my business, and I'm going to make sure that you're always working hard and that you're never wasting my time, because when you're on the clock, you're wasting my money, essentially. So I'm going to make sure you're working hard. And the other business model is that of, well, I want my people to succeed, so I'm going to make them want to succeed, right? With them. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? And that is, there needs to be some buy-in if they're going to listen. So, for example, with a business, if I give them an incentive, they're more likely to work overtime. If I say, all right, come in these later hours and I'm going to give you overtime pay. Giving incentive is important, right? How incentive works for us is we say, you like being here and you like me as a human being. Fundamentally, you enjoy my presence. And because you enjoy my presence, you are more likely to want to hear my counsel. If you don't like me, you're not going to want to hear what I have to say. If there's a little bit of investment in you, if I've invested in you my time or my joy or my relationship time, if I've invested that into you, then you're more likely to bring it back, reciprocate it, right? As human beings, we're in a lot of ways, we are mirrors. We mirror how the other person acts. And so if this person is more friendly to me, they have a more friendly disposition, I'm more likely to reciprocate that. All that to say, when you are in a mindset of building rapport, the students are way more likely to heed what you have to say than if you are just telling them, hey, this is what you got to do.
Yeah. So, Gabe, I know you wanted to talk about lenses in this episode as how it applies to why we do what we do.
Wait, I wonder if... Can they hear my squeaky chair? Can you guys hear this? I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Anyway.
I'm cutting you off.
I'll let you talk on that for a while.
Oh, yes. So the idea of lenses is just going back to why we do this, right? We teach martial arts, but we do it because we want to better people and help them to take on the world in a more wise fashion, I suppose. And I guess just a side note is I always consider, you're going to hear throughout the podcast a lot of my eccentricities. This is one of them for sure. I imagine in my mind almost everything that happens as a war, as a conflict, not a physical war, but when I'm on the mat there's a war between the students and myself. They oftentimes, well, at least the ones that are maybe disruptive, they oftentimes want to do their own thing, play their own games, and not listen to me. And my job is to rein them in and to keep them focused. And so I see a lot of things as conflict. Well, one of the wars that you face is when you go into the world. If you want to change it, the world doesn't necessarily want to be changed.
Mm-hmm. People don't like change.
People don't like change. Yeah, exactly. People don't want to change from their status quo, regardless of how destructive or painful or unproductive it might be.
I actually learned that originally as a sparring technique. People don't like change, so change up your fighting, and you will have an advantage.
See, everything's a war. We're just going to go out into the world and punch it in the face.
We told you guys we were martial artists.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good segue back. So, martial arts is our lens of taking on the world. Maybe I think that way because of martial arts, but I think that if you look at things as a conflict, you're either winning or losing. There's no two ways about it. You're either winning or losing. And so if you're losing the conflict that is life, you're not in a great spot. And so what that looks like is, well, am I bettering myself, or am I stagnant, right? We talked about stagnancy in episode 1, so I don't want to spend too long on this, but if I am living an unhealthy lifestyle, an unproductive lifestyle, that means that life is beating me. Because one of my biggest fears, I suppose this is coming with my faith, which is I believe that everything I do should be bringing people into a joyful relationship with Christ. And I think that especially has had a huge impact on my martial arts career, because there's so much, I suppose cynicism is the right word, but there's so much death and decay and degeneracy in the world, right, because of sin. And if I can remove even the smallest bit of that from people's lives and teach them to, once again, wage war against that which does not help them, that which hurts them, if I can teach them to wage war in a stronger manner, then they're going to be better off. Yeah. So back to the world, once again, you're waging war with the world, and the world wants you to not succeed, and it wants you to not attain to your goals, and it wants you to not better yourself. And every day you have to fight this. And how I know this is, well, that's entropy. Entropy is constantly at work. And I believe lots of other forces, of course, that are much nastier than it, but entropy states that everything must get to the most chaotic form possible. And every day we're fighting entropy. Entropy is fought by something as simple as mowing your lawn. It grows out of proportion, and you mow it to keep it orderly. Dust accumulates in your house, and you have to wipe the dust off. You got to dust your house. And so we're constantly fighting what seems like an endless battle, which I suppose is an endless battle, that is against entropy. But it doesn't mean that just because it's one that can't be won, it shouldn't be fought, right? Because entropy for us looks like, I don't want to work, I don't want to chase goals, because once again, that's work. That's me having to push myself out of that comfort zone, right? Changing what I do. And so that puts a weight on us that is, I need to change what I'm doing, and I have to improve to beat this enemy that is entropy and any other forces that might come against me. And if I want to succeed, I need to be every single day at war to make myself win, to make myself better. And so where we fit into this is, my goal is to train people to be better fighters. And when I say better fighters, I don't just mean in martial arts. When I train people to be better fighters, I mean I want you to be better equipped to take on that world and to take on entropy. And this is, I'd say, hundreds of hours of soul searching on my part. I think it's always good to, spend some time alone to think. And this has been something I've thought of for at least a couple years, and that is that if I can make people just a little bit stronger against their opponent, then that means that their life will be more meaningful, right? Because if they are less chaotic and less disorderly and less ill-motivated and less driven to do nothing but sit at home and be unproductive, right? Less unproductive. When that is put to the side, that means that their life is being fulfilled by improvement, and they are working to make themselves better than what they could be. That is not only the goal, that is the reward. Right back to seeing a student succeed. That is them beating their enemies, and their enemy is, I can't break through this board. Smash, I broke through the board. I can't step onto the mat. It's too scary. There they go, onto the mat to take the class. And so seeing that success is, well, it's the task, but it's also the reward. Both are the case. I want to achieve this thing, and achieving it is reward beyond measure.
You mentioned a student, when you were talking about the origin of Battle Buddies, you mentioned a student who had not passed their test, and you and Eric thought that you could prepare the students better. That student went back to the test and wrecked the test.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We didn't finish the story. That's fair. The student went back and absolutely destroyed that test. And guess what? I felt a strong, potent, one of the most potent senses of accomplishment. And I didn't even do the test. My goal on that person's test was to beat them down. And I was so proud at how unsuccessful I was. And so seeing that success, right, like you said, seeing that success, that's the reward in itself. Because, that brings me joy. So now you know why I teach martial arts. I want to be happier.
Yeah. It's no amount of money, no amount of whatever it may be that makes what we do satisfying.
Dude, if any teacher is listening to this, they already know this. You don't teach because you get money.
Yeah.
You're not teaching for the paycheck.
Ain't no teacher.
You're teaching because you love the job.
Yeah.
And if you're teaching because of the paycheck, maybe get into a field that pays better. Right? Without making this in any way political. Sorry, teachers. Not the best paycheck in the world. And I know for martial artists it's the same way. You have to work a good amount. And I'm not saying that this is wrong or immoral or anything. I'm just saying that if you do this, you're not doing it because, oh yeah, I get a big fat check at the end of the day. No, you're doing this because you want to see people succeed. And that's why you're doing it. There's really no other good reason.
I don't even know what to add to that, because that's what it is.
That's martial arts for you.
And oftentimes when I'm teaching, I think about, where would I be if not for the instructors who taught me and humbled me when I need it and gave me confidence?
Yeah, I don't like to think about that much.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, no, I don't, because it's scary. No, really, like that.
Oh, yeah?
That sounds so cheesy. Oh, it's scary. I don't want to think about it. No. I consider what my life would be like without martial arts. I can't even fathom where I would be right now.
I can't even,
because I know how arrogant I was and how self-centered and conceited. And my coaches know this. They know what I was like. They were the ones who kind of whipped it out of me. It's still something I wrestle with, by the way. But if it weren't for martial arts, who knows how self-centered and conceited I'd be right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, on the other hand, the reason why I do like to think
there's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with it.
Is because I think if not for them, I wouldn't be here. So if not for me, they won't one day be where I am. And so it is my job to make sure I'm serving them to the best of my ability. It's a sort of a pay it forward mindset. Like, the past generation did this for me, so I'm going to pay it forward by doing this.
I'm going to pay my dues and put in my work, because my instructors did it for me, so I better be darn sure that I'm going to do it for the next ones.
Absolutely. And no matter what, you as the instructor aren't going to give up on your students.
Yeah.
Their school teachers might give up on them. Heck, their parents might give up on them, although I hope their parents don't.
I hope so.
But you aren't going to.
I really hope the parents don't give up on them. But yeah, that's fair. If hypothetically speaking, everyone gave up on them, we will be the last people, and we won't until we die, give up on these students.
Yeah.
Nothing will change that, right? And that's kind of, to bring in the big analogy hammer, if you don't mind, right, back to my Christianity, the idea of God being unable to give up on humanity. Or not that he's unable, but he's unwilling, right? His resolve is so strong that he's never going to give up on you, no matter how lousy your life is, no matter how terrible you live, no matter how much you disobey what he says. He's always there. And so taking a mindset, right? If you don't believe in God, fine. Take the mindset of what is pictured to be the perfect being. Take that mindset, and that mindset is, I will never leave you. I'll never give up on you. I'm always going to be there for you. If you take that mindset, right? If he doesn't give up on someone as lousy as you, if he doesn't give up on someone as lousy as me, I should work a little bit harder to take care of this 4-year-old who maybe is spinning around in class, right? But how many worse things have I done? I better take care of this kid. And back to the human element of it, my coaches took care of me in the same way. So why would I give any less? And kind of back to the start, and I suppose we can end with this. My goal is not just to pay my dues. My goal is to, and this is my purpose statement really for me, is to train the next generation so they're better than I was. Silly story, and then we can go. The story of Darth Bane in Star Wars, right? Bear with me. This has a point. Okay? Darth Bane in Star Wars was a famous Sith Lord, and he created what was known as the Rule of Two. So the way the Sith were operating, and by the way, at this time, this was before the Republic, before the Star Wars episodes, right? This is my nerdist showing a little bit, but I don't care, so that's okay. Before episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9 that we forget about. Now my bias is showing. Oh no, what am I doing?
Oh no.
Before those, there was a time in the Sith's life where the Sith were constantly being beat by the Jedi. And they didn't know why, because they had lots and lots and lots of Sith. There were hundreds upon hundreds of Sith. And they kept losing to the Jedi. Well, what Darth Bane noted was that what was happening with the Sith was one master would take on, 5 or 6 or 7 apprentices, but he wouldn't care that much about him. More so, he would withhold a lot of his information, and he would train them only a decent amount because he was focusing on all of them, and he didn't really care about each one individually. And so what would happen was they would be worse off than he was. And guess what? That cycle continues, because then each of those apprentices become masters, and they are not as, my elbow just popped, that was weird, and they're not as skilled,
competent.
they're not as competent as their master, and so they take that lack of competence and then pass it on to the next generation, only worse, who become even less competent. And so he saw that and said, this is not working. And so eventually, spoiler alert if you ever want to read up on him, he eventually kills all of the Sith except for one apprentice he eventually takes under his wing. And the reason for that is he says, if I pour all of my time, if I pour all of my abilities into this one person, if I really work hard for this person and do my best to be the best I possibly can be for this person, he didn't word it like that. It's probably like, be evil to them, whatever. Then they're going to end up better than me. And then the other part of the Rule of Two, by the way, this doesn't translate as well to us, because the apprentice had to eventually kill the master. And if they killed the master, then they became the master. And that meant that they were stronger than the master. So that way, each Sith, right, would get a little bit better than the one before. And so how that translates, obviously, without the death part, is my goal as an instructor, as a coach, is to teach my students so well that they are better off than I was, not only at their age, but when they get to my rank, my level, my experience, that they are better off, that they can do more things, that they can be stronger, they can be better. That is the goal of martial arts. And whenever you listen to us in our podcast, that's our core belief. We want our students to be better off than we were when we started, and better off for their generation when they come along.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this is a good place to end it, but actually not, because announcement time.
Announcement. Quick announcement. Well, big announcement, I suppose. Next episode, I know you guys all stuck around for this. You didn't really want to hear us talk, so here it is. Next episode, we are going to have our first guest on the show. Our first guest is going to be Matt Rosales. Matt Rosales is our coach, our sensei. He trained me up since I was 4, and we want to have him on so we can talk about, if you really want to know about why our gym is what it is, why Max Academy is here, what it came from, because none of this would be around without him, what his purpose was for making this dojo, for making us here, why it's named what it is, and everything else, and his point of view for his purpose, sort of the same things we talked about today. He's going to be on next episode. He'll have a lot of really good things to say. We're super excited. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to let us know. We'll give a big announcement about it. We'll let you guys know, and we'll have about a week before the episode airs, we're going to film. So make sure you get any questions in that you might have. Ask him some big ones. Give him some hard ones.
Yeah, ones he has to really think about.
Ones he's got to think. He's going, oh, man, that's a good question. That's how you know it's a good question, if they say so. Yeah, give us lots of good questions you guys might have, and hopefully it'll be a great episode. We're really excited, guys.
Yeah, and just for those of you who are unaware, Sensei Matt, which is how we refer to him, he is the owner and founder of the Max Academy of Martial Arts, which is where we are instructors and also where we were students also.
Yep.
So just to throw that in there, just in case anyone's listening who did not know that.
Yes.
Okay, well, that about wraps it up. We will see you guys next time. So we will see you guys in another 2 weeks, because it's every other week. And next time that you're listening, we will have a guest, which is super exciting.
Super cool.
The way we have it planned is that we're going to be doing a guest every 3 episodes. So we'll have an episode, an episode, an episode, then a guest episode, and then another 3 episodes, and then a guest episode.
Yeah. So you guys will have to listen to our voices only most of the time. So sorry, guys.
All right, well, with that, we will see you guys next time.